Imagine waking up, grabbing your phone, and realizing your entire digital life is just gone.
Right. Just totally wiped out.
Yeah, your job, your social network, your voice. Legally erased overnight by your government with zero warning. Just a blank screen.
It sounds like a dystopian movie, honestly.
It really does. But for the youth of Nepal in the late summer of 2025, that wasn't, a glitch or a movie. It was actual state policy.
And the reaction to that policy fundamentally altered the history of the nation in just 48 hours.
Exactly. So welcome to you, the learner, to today's custom-tailored deep dive. We are exploring a highly sensitive Official Inquiry Commission report today.
A really massive one, yeah.
Super massive. It details the unprecedented Gen Z protests of Padra 23 and 24, which is in the year 2082 of the Nepali calendar.
Which is late 2025 for those using the Gregorian calendar.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack how a fundamental, almost tragic misunderstanding of technology led to a staggering loss of life, widespread destruction, and ultimately the complete dissolution of a national parliament.
It's a heavy topic. And a quick note before we really dive into the fire here.
Yeah, we need to be very clear about this.
We do. The official commission report we are unpacking today is highly, highly sensitive. It's full of politically charged content, raw historical grievances, and conflicting testimonies from rival political figures.
Oh, absolutely. Tons of finger pointing.
Tons of it. So we want to be completely clear right up front to you listening. We are not taking any sides here at all.
Zero sides.
Right. Our job is strictly to help you understand the original source material. We are impartially reporting the facts and testimonies laid out in the documents.
Yeah.
We are definitely not here to endorse any specific political viewpoint.
Absolutely. We are just here to navigate the mechanics of a systemic collapse. Because, when you hear that a government fell in 2 days, your immediate assumption is what?
Usually a military coup.
Right. Or like a massive organized rebel army marching on the Capitol.
Yeah, tanks in the streets, that kind of thing.
Exactly. But that's a very 20th century analog way of looking at power. To understand this specific collapse, we first have to look at the decades of pressure that built up and the exact match that ignited it.
Because it didn't just happen out of nowhere.
No, not at all. So let's start with the historical context the commission lays out. What was the vibe before the internet went dark?
Well, what the investigators uncovered was a nation experiencing deep, chronic structural fatigue. I mean, since the restoration of democracy in 1990 or 2046 in the Nepali calendar, Nepal has seen 30 different governments in just 35 years.
Wait, hold on. Let me make sure I heard that right. 30 governments in 35 years.
30 and 35, yeah.
That means practically every year the entire executive leadership is turning over.
Pretty much.
How does a state even function on a basic administrative level with that kind of whiplash?
I mean, it barely does.
Ah.
And that is exactly the baseline condition the investigators highlight in the report.
It's just constant instability.
Right. With constant reshuffling among the exact same political figures, long-term economic planning becomes nearly impossible. You just can't build anything.
You're just trying to survive the next confidence vote.
Exactly. So the result was rampant, deep-seated corruption, a completely stagnant political leadership, and massive systemic frustration among the youth.
Which makes sense. If you're 20 years old, you've never seen a stable government in your life.
Never. And for decades, the primary outlet for this frustration was mass migration. Young people were leaving by the millions.
Wow.
Millions.
Yeah, going for foreign employment in the Gulf, Malaysia, and beyond, simply because they felt there were zero economic opportunities at home.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because a 35-year history of bad governance is terrible, sure.
Right.
But we've seen countries endure decades of corruption and economic stagnation without their parliament literally burning down over a weekend.
Fair point. So what made this specific moment, Bhadra 19, when the government instituted this massive digital ban, the straw that broke the camel's back? Imagine a societal pressure cooker that's been boiling for 35 years.
Okay.
Instead of turning down the heat, the government decides to weld the release valve completely shut. Why do they do that?
Well, according to the commission, it comes down to a fatal misstep by the state, rooted in a fundamental misinterpretation of their own judiciary.
How interesting, like a legal mix-up.
Basically. The Supreme Court had recently issued an order regarding social media. The court directed the government to register and regulate these platforms to monitor illegal or harmful content.
Okay, register and regulate. That sounds normal for a government.
Right, but the government took that mandate for regulation and weaponized it into an execution. On Padre 19, they issued a sweeping total ban on 26 unregistered platforms.
26 platforms overnight.
Overnight. We are talking about Facebook, WhatsApp, YouTube, Discord, TikTok, Reddit, Signal, all of it.
Oh man, they effectively severed the entire digital nervous system of the country's youth.
Exactly. And the investigators point out why this was the breaking point. The government viewed these apps as just entertainment.
Right, just kids doing TikTok dances.
Exactly. Totally failing to realize they had become the primary macroeconomic infrastructure for an entire demographic.
Yeah. For a generation facing high unemployment, these platforms aren't just for scrolling or posting memes. They're digital job creators.
They are everything.
They are gig economy hubs, freelance marketplaces, the primary avenues for modern commerce. I mean, if you're a young graphic designer in Kathmandu, Discord isn't a game chat, it's your office.
Precisely. By shutting them down, the state didn't just silence young people, they essentially expropriated their livelihoods.
They fired them.
Yeah, they severed their connection to the global economy in one pen stroke.
That is wild. But here is where I am completely stuck on the mechanics of this, reading through the report.
What do you mean?
If the government successfully banned 26 major communication and social media platforms on Padre 19, how did a decentralized group of Gen Z kids organize a massive, coordinated, nationwide protest just 4 days later on Padre 23?
Right. It seems impossible.
Yeah. If you cut the phone lines, how do you coordinate a march of thousands of people?
Well, that is the exact blind spot the state suffered from. They assumed banning the commercial apps would ban the communication.
Because they're thinking like it's 1995.
Exactly. But this is a digitally native generation. The commission details how the youth instantly pivoted to technological workarounds.
Like what? What did they do?
Within hours of the ban, virtual private network usage VPNs skyrocketed, allowing users to mask their location and bypass the national firewall entirely.
Oh, wow. So the firewall was basically useless right away.
Totally. And they didn't stop there. They utilized encrypted SMS chains, Bluetooth mesh networks.
Wait, mesh networks, like offline.
Yeah, mesh networks allow phones to communicate directly with each other without needing an internet service provider at all.
That is brilliant. So if you're standing in a crowd, your phone talks to the guy next to you, and his talks to the next guy, and suddenly you have a network.
Exactly. They also used open source peer-to-peer protocols.
So the ban didn't actually stop the communication at all.
Not even a little bit.
It just pushed all that mobilization into unmonitorable, dark channels where the state's intelligence apparatus couldn't track it.
You hit the nail on the head. The government literally blinded itself.
Wow.
And because they couldn't see the coordination happening on these alternative networks, they were completely caught off guard when the digital mobilization spilled over into the physical world.
It's like removing the suspension from a speeding car.
That's a great way to put it.
These digital platforms were the shock absorbers for this generation's economic anxiety. They could vent, find gig work, organize virtually.
Right.
By banning them overnight, the government removed the suspension, and all that kinetic energy instantly transferred to the physical streets. And it shattered the chassis of the state.
It really did. So let's walk through exactly how that kinetic energy erupted, according to the timeline in the report.
Let's do it. So this brings us to Padre 23.
Yes. On Padre 23, the physical manifestation begins. It starts as a relatively standard, peaceful youth protest at Madikar.
And Madikar is a traditional, highly visible protest square in Kathmandu, right?
Exactly. It's a very common spot for demonstrations. The crowd, which is largely leaderless and digitally coordinated, begins moving toward Baneshwar.
Where the National Parliament building is located.
Right. But the state security apparatus, which is trained for traditional, highly organized political rallies, completely miscalculates the volatility of this crowd.
So the police try to contain it using 20th century riot tactics.
Right. They deploy water cannons first. And when the crowd doesn't disperse, things escalate horribly.
The report says they quickly escalated to using live ammunition.
Yes. The inquiry documents that 19 people died on that very first day.
Oh, man. 19 civilians dead over an internet ban protest.
It's just an unfathomable tragedy.
And once blood is spilled, the entire nature of a protest shifts completely. You can't put that back in the bottle. Which brings us to Padre 24.
Right. So after the deaths, the government imposes a strict curfew, assuming they can just order everyone back indoors.
But I'm guessing that didn't work.
The curfew is completely ignored.
Wow.
The violence spreads exponentially across the city and the country, and the targets become highly specific and symbolic.
What are they targeting?
Their crowds swarm the Supreme Court. They breach Singh Durbar.
And Singh Durbar is basically the administrative nerve center of the entire Nepali government, right? Housing the prime minister's office and major ministries.
Exactly. It's the fortress of the government. They also target the president's residence, the prime minister's residence, and eventually the parliament building itself.
And the outcome is that parliament is actually dissolved amidst the chaos.
Yes, the government essentially collapses under the pressure.
The toll outlined in this official commission report is just staggering. I'm looking at the numbers here.
They are very grim.
76 people dead in total over the 2 days. That includes 42 individuals killed directly by police firing, 3 police officers beaten to death by mobs, 10 inmates who died in prison riots, and civilians trapped in burning buildings.
Over 2,500 people injured.
And 85 billion rupees in physical damages. That is just, it's catastrophic.
It truly is a national trauma.
But here's where it gets really interesting. And I have to push back on the narrative of the crowd here for a second, based on what the report says.
Okay, what are you saying?
A decentralized, leaderless protest organized by Gen Z kids who are furious about internet access and unemployment. They don't just organically decide to break into the Supreme Court and start burning specific targeted legal files.
Right.
They don't systematically destroy corruption evidence in specific government ministries. Doesn't this point to a massive hijacking of the movement?
That's a highly critical observation.
Yeah.
And the commission's findings validate your skepticism completely.
Really? So it wasn't the kids doing the targeted burning?
The report makes a very sharp distinction between the events of the 23rd and the 24th. The genuine youth demographic initiated the protest on the 23rd to peacefully oppose the social media ban and systemic corruption.
Right. They were just marching.
Exactly. But on Padra 24, as the police were entirely overwhelmed trying to manage the sheer volume of the crowds across the city, the momentum was explicitly hijacked.
Hijacked by who? Who steps into that chaos?
By organized criminal syndicates and opportunistic political infiltrators.
Wow. So they just used the kids.
The investigators found that these bad actors used the massive youth protests as a literal smokescreen.
That is dark.
It is. While the riot police were distracted by flash mobs of teenagers at the main intersections, organized groups systematically infiltrated Singh Durbar and the Supreme Court.
To do what? Destroy evidence.
Exactly. To orchestrate targeted looting, arson, and the destruction of highly sensitive evidence.
Yeah.
Because like you said, burning specific corruption files isn't the work of a teenager upset about Discord being banned.
No, not at all. You don't know which cabinet to burn if you're just mad about your internet.
Right. It's a calculated tactical strike by groups using the chaos as a shield for their own illicit agendas.
If we pull back for a second, what's truly terrifying is how effective that smokescreen was.
Very effective.
And the commission report actually places this Nepali uprising directly within a fascinating, broader global pattern. This was not an isolated freak occurrence, was it?
Not at all. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the report explicitly compares the events in Nepal to a recent wave of digital native uprisings globally.
Like where else?
Well, we're looking at the Aragalaya movement in Sri Lanka in 2022.
Oh, right, where they stormed the presidential palace and were swimming in the pool.
Exactly. Also, the massive student protests in Bangladesh in 2024 that literally forced their prime minister to flee the country in a helicopter.
Wow, yeah. And the Gen Z finance bill protests in Kenya.
Yes, all of these.
And similar youth-led movements in Indonesia, Morocco, Peru. What is the shared mechanism here? Like, how are teenagers outmaneuvering state militaries across the globe?
The defining feature is their decentralized, algorithmic nature.
Algorithmic.
Yes, you have massive youth populations deeply frustrated by inflation, lack of mobility, entrenched elite privilege. They leverage platforms like X, Discord, and TikTok to organize, but, and this is the key, they don't appoint a leader.
There's no figurehead.
Exactly. They don't have a central committee issuing orders.
Which means traditional state security apparatuses are completely useless against them.
Totally obsolete.
Because if you are a police chief, your entire playbook relies on identifying the leader on the megaphone, arresting them, raiding their headquarters, and cutting the head off the snake.
Right. That's protest management 101.
But here, there is no head. There is no headquarters.
Precisely. They move at the speed of an algorithm. Using swarm intelligence, they organize flash mobs, disperse the second riot police arrive, and instantly reform at a secondary target miles away.
Coordinated entirely by a secure group chat.
Yes. The state's O-A-day loop, their ability to observe, orient, decide, and act, is fundamentally too slow.
Because of the bureaucracy.
Exactly. A bureaucratic chain of command where a police captain has to radio a commander who has to call a minister for permission to deploy a squad. That simply cannot compete with a decentralized network, making instantaneous collective decisions on a mesh network.
It really makes you marvel at the irony of it all.
How so?
Well, you have an entire generation that is frequently dismissed by older politicians around the world as being, lazy, screen-obsessed, or entitled. Yet this is the exact generation that is actively dismantling established geopolitical structures and forcing regime changes globally in record time.
It's true.
They are using the very technology they are mocked for to systematically break the analog power structures of the 20th century.
It is a profound paradigm shift.
Yeah.
And that shift and the utter failure to recognize it becomes painfully obvious when you dive into the official testimonies in the Commission's report.
Oh, the testimonies. Let's get into those.
We have to, because we get to hear from the people who were actually in charge during the crisis.
Right. So let's look at the corridors of power. While the Capitol was burning and the youth were outmaneuvering the police, how did the leadership react?
It's quite revealing.
What is truly surreal about reading the testimonies of the three former prime ministers interviewed for this report, KP Sharma Oli, Sher Bahadur Doba, and Pushpa Kamal Dahal, who is also known as Prachanda, is that despite being bitter political rivals for decades,
they all suffer from the exact same institutional blind spot.
Exactly. It is a fascinating psychological study.
It really is. Rather than taking ownership of the systemic failures that led to the eruption, their testimonies collectively point fingers at invisible forces.
Let's start with ex-Prime Minister Oli. He actually resigned on Padre 24 amidst the peak of the chaos, right?
He did. And in his testimony, he vehemently blames infiltrators. He claims he explicitly ordered minimal force to prevent civilian casualties.
Even though 19 people died on the first day.
Right. And he raises the exact same question you did. Why was specific data targeted and destroyed?
Ah, so he knew it was a smokescreen too.
He did. He notes that his own former home in Teratham was burned down, viewing the entire event as a coordinated attack on the state, hiding behind the youth.
Okay, so that's Oli. And then you read ex-Prime Minister Doba's testimony, which introduces an entirely new layer of modern chaos into this.
Oh, this part is wild.
His home was also attacked by violent crowds, right?
Yes, his compound was breached. But in a massive twist, he testifies that he was actually rescued and physically protected by a group of genuine Gen Z protesters.
Wait, rescued?
Yeah. They formed a human shield against the criminal infiltrators trying to breach his compound.
The protesters saved the former prime minister. That is, you couldn't write a script like that.
You really couldn't. And Deepa's testimony brings up another critical mechanism of this uprising, the weaponization of artificial intelligence.
How did AI play into it?
During the siege of his home, viral videos began circulating on the remaining dark channels, showing massive piles of illegal cash supposedly discovered in his residence.
Oh, wow. To rile the crowd up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He vehemently denies this in the report, testifying that the videos were highly sophisticated, AI-generated deepfakes.
Fake evidence.
Designed specifically to act as an accelerant, pouring digital gasoline on the physical fire of the riots.
Fake evidence generated by AI, distributed on encrypted mesh networks, driving real-world mobs to commit arson. That is terrifyingly modern.
It's the new reality of warfare, basically.
So what about ex-Prime Minister Prachanda? What did he say?
He viewed the violence not merely as public anger against a specific policy, but as a deliberate structural attack on the democratic system itself.
So a systemic threat.
Yes. While he stated his party supported the genuine economic grievances of the youth, he largely blamed domestic and foreign infiltration for the destruction.
Did any of them take the blame?
Barely. Prachanda acknowledged only briefly that decades of political interference in state mechanisms had eroded public trust. But mostly, it was external blame.
But the most damning testimony, in my opinion, the part that truly exposes the rot in the floorboards, comes from the parliament speakers and the president's office.
Oh, absolutely. That part is shocking.
The president had to be evacuated to an army safe house. And the speakers of the house admit something that just floors me.
They admitted to the commission that there were absolutely no contingency plans.
None.
Zero. No evacuation protocols for lawmakers, no single command security structure for the national parliament building itself.
How does the national parliament not have a unified security protocol?
It's inexplicable. When the mob breached the perimeter, the various security branches, the police, the armed police force, the military elements, weren't even communicating on the same radio frequencies.
They couldn't even talk to each other.
They were totally siloed while the building was falling.
So what does this all mean? We have this massive, heavily researched official report. We have decades of historical context.
Right.
But ultimately, we have a ruling class that refuses to look in the mirror. None of these leaders take ownership of the fact that they welded the pressure valve shut.
No, they blame infiltrators, they blame AI, they blame the algorithms.
This raises an important question, though.
And it is the crux of the entire commission report. Yes, bad actors hijacked the movement. Yes, AI deepfakes accelerated the violence.
Right.
But those elements only succeeded because the state provided them the perfect vacuum.
Yeah, exactly.
The report exposes a fatal structural flaw, a complete breakdown in the chain of command, zero preparedness for fast-moving asymmetric threats, and a political elite completely alienated from the realities, the grievances, and the technological capabilities of its youngest citizens.
They were playing a slow, deliberate game of chess. And the youth showed up playing a real-time, decentralized strategy video game. The rules, the speed, the terrain, it was all fundamentally different.
And the state's absolute failure to recognize that difference is what allowed the criminal element to hijack the space in between and burn the system down.
That is the defining lesson of Bhadra 23 and 24.
Without a doubt.
If you are listening to this right now, whether you work in tech in Silicon Valley, sit on a corporate board in London, or work in municipal governance in Tokyo, you might be thinking, what does a parliamentary collapse in Kathmandu have to do with me?
It's a fair question.
But look at the underlying mechanism we just unpacked today. A fundamental misreading of how people use technology ignited decades of systemic frustration.
Right.
It proved that you cannot govern, manage, or market to a 21st century digital populace with a 20th century analog mindset.
The friction between those two worlds is exactly where systems collapse, every single time.
The apps might change and the local grievances might differ, but the algorithms of unrest are global now.
Very global. The speed of mobilization is unprecedented, and the vulnerability of traditional institutions to rapid decentralized swarming is a universal reality.
Which leaves us with a lingering question to ponder long after this deep dive ends.
Let's hear it.
We've seen that a decentralized, digitally coordinated movement can inadvertently provide the perfect cover for bad actors to topple a government and dissolve a national parliament in just 48 hours.
A terrifying proof of concept.
Right. So, if that is the new reality of our geopolitical landscape, is the slow, deliberate, bureaucratic structure of traditional representative democracy fundamentally incompatible with the speed of the digital age?
It is a structural tension that no nation has truly solved yet.
It's something to mull over as you navigate your own digital spaces today. Thanks for bringing your curiosity to this deep dive. Keep learning.